Hello there and welcome to another LightWave tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at the orthographic camera inside of LightWave. Now the orthographic camera is used to present a 3D object on a 2D plane. So I've got the camera selected here and I'm going to take it from orthographic to perspective. So the way that you get to the orthographic camera is through camera, properties, and then clicking on the drop down here. If I change it back to perspective, you'll notice that there's a bit of a change. So what the orthographic camera does, as I've just stated, is it flattens the 3D object onto a 2D plane so it displays correctly. So as you can see here with the perspective camera, the frame of the camera starts here and extends outwards. But if we change it to the orthographic camera, you'll notice that if I zoom out a little bit, you'll notice that there's a big bounding box just here, a big rectangular bounding box. Now this actually is the entirety of the lens towards the left side here, the one closest to the camera. When you change your camera to an orthographic view, you'll notice that the object appears very far away. However, the orthographic camera does not really act the way that other cameras do in 3D space. So if I were to move this closer to my object, you'll notice that even though I'm moving it closer, the camera doesn't actually get any closer. I can actually put the camera inside the object, but you don't do that, so let's Control and Z that. The way to change the size of the orthographic camera's view is down here in the size option. So if we reduce this, you'll notice that the object is coming closer to us. You'll also notice that as I reduce this, the box for the orthographic camera gets smaller and smaller. This is because we're reducing the size of we're reducing its eyesight essentially, reducing how much it's seeing. The smaller we get it, the more concise and succinct the camera gets. So you can see it's sitting very snugly around the object just here. This is essentially the entirety of what the orthographic camera is used for. But because we've got it here, so the way to explain the difference between the orthographic and the perspective is, with the orthographic camera, it's like if you've ever had a camera and you've ever hovered it above something in real life and you've looked through the viewfinder or the lens, you'll notice that there's some warping and distortion towards the edges of the lens. Even if it's just very subtle, you can tell that it's almost like very subtle fisheye. The reason why is because with a perspective camera, which is the way that all cameras are, unless you have an orthographic lens, you're coming from one point and you're extending that viewpoint out all the way to here. So all of this allows for that distortion and warping to happen. In the orthographic view, however, there is no distortion like there is in the perspective. It's a very fixed bounded box, which means that whatever's in here, obviously it's only being displayed in 2D, it's not being displayed in 3D, but everything is on the same plane, so you don't get the warping that you do with the perspective camera. So here, this view here, it's almost as if we're looking at it from, let's say you're looking at it through your camera, you haven't got an orthographic lens, you're looking at it simply through your default lens, and this is what you would see. So you would see the shadows and you would see the edges of the object. So the orthographic camera is really useful for many things. Just make sure that you remember to zoom in and zoom out with it. You can obviously get much smaller with it, so there are maybe some times when you use the camera first of all and the actual view port is very, very small, so you'd obviously want to extend that out. But it's very useful for displaying just 3D objects in 2D space. Now be careful of where you put your objects and your camera, because obviously the orthographic camera doesn't account for perspective because it's an orthographic camera, and so therefore if you have something that's really obscurely displayed, it's going to just crush the entire object down to the 2D plane and it may display very strangely. But that is the orthographic camera and how to use it. It's a very simple tool really when you get used to it, or just in general, it's just a very simple tool. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy orthographic cameraing.